For today's assignment, we're going to be formatting a federal brief. So here today, I've given you an unformatted federal brief. This just came across our desk from the attorney. So as the working paralegal, we're going to take this and get it ready for filing. So here we have our brief. This is in the case of Charlie Utter versus State of South Dakota. Charlie Utter being the petitioner and State of South Dakota being the respondent. So we can see here is our first page is our cover page. Then page 2, questions presented, whether an ordinance is there. Now our job is not, with this task, we are not here to correct anything in this form. This is from the attorney's desk. We are just here to fix the formatting and get it ready for filing. So you can see there are no page numbers. We don't have a table of authorities. We don't have a table of contents. All things that we need. Requirements for filing this federal brief is all the predecessing pages need to be labeled in small Roman numerals, the page numbers, and our statement of the case. Our brief begins on page 1, so that means we need to get page numbering in here. We need it to say page 1 in here. So that's the first thing we're going to fix is fix our page numbering and get that ready. And our cover page needs to not have any page numbering at all. Okay, so you'll remember from your NSLT training lessons that the first thing we need to do in order to have different footers is we need to create section breaks, right? Not page breaks, section breaks. We'll come put our cursor here on page 1. Here at the bottom, we're going to insert and we're going to put in section breaks, not a page break. Notice that we could come in here and we could put in page breaks. So we're going to go layout, and now we can create different types of breaks. So we'll come in here to breaks, and we'll come in to a section break. So we're going to insert a section break and start the new section on the next page. So that's what we'll do. We'll come in here. And now we've got a section break there on that page. So now it's like, think of your Word document like a roll of paper towels. So it's continuous all the way. We could unroll a roll of paper towels and have one big long sheet. But if we get water on it, that water's going to spread from sheet to sheet to sheet because it's all connected. So if we don't want it to spread, we would rip apart the sheets. And that's what we do with a section break. That's kind of like ripping a sheet away from our roll. So now if something gets wet, which we call like formatting from one page now won't spread onto the next page. So we put in that break in between. Okay, so now we have our questions presented page. That's going to need to go in lowercase Roman numerals. And so we can come in here and we're going to have another section. We got to put in our table of contents and our table of authorities. That is all going to come in here ahead of questions presented. But we know before we start our statement of the case, we're going to need another section break. So we'll put our cursor at the end of this page and we will insert another section break. Now you can see it shifted our page down, so we can just hit delete. It's going to put our heading back up at the top of the page where it belongs. And now we can kind of do a test here with it. So remember section 1, cover page, no page numbering. We go into our first is, this would be where we would put our table of authorities, table of contents. If we want, we can get those sections ready to go, but we'll come back and we'll do those after we get everything marked. So we can come into our footer here on page 2 at the bottom of our questions presented, and we're going to do our page numbering. So we want the page numbering to be at the bottom of the page. We want it to be just right in the center. I kind of like using more options. What I'm looking for is one that does, we don't want anything fancy. We will just go and let's take this one that just has our number, plain numbering 2. Let's take that option. And now you can see it put number 1, but we need it to be Roman numerals, so we can just highlight, right click. We can format our page numbers, and we can tell it the number format that we need to do. We're going to be in small lowercase Roman numerals. We hit OK, and that becomes a lowercase I. But you can see since we input our section break, that did not continue on to the other page. And so with our section break, you can see we have our same as previous. So that means our formatting is going to follow until we turn that off. So we're going to come down here. We're going to turn off our link to previous. We'll turn that off, and that way our section doesn't continue to follow what the previous one does. And here we're going to come in this one because we did not do, or sorry, in this one we did our link to previous. We need to turn that off so it doesn't come up here and add it to our first. So now we can delete that one. Cover page doesn't have page numbering. Small Roman starts on this first page of our predecessor pages. And our brief starts page 1. Okay, so we got our section breaks in. Whew. Feels like we've just been working like crazy already. Okay, so let's move on to our next thing. Before we do anything, I'm going to save it just because, in work you always get interrupted. You don't want to lose any of that. Okay, so let's start into our brief, and we're going to start marking our table of contents and our table of authorities. Remember, that's under our references is how we'll mark our table of authorities. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark all of our headings. That will be the first thing to do. So our questions presented is our first heading. That's going to be a heading 1. So if I didn't have my preset styles already marked, I could make it look how I wanted to. Come up here to heading 1 and say, hey, I want to update heading 1 to match my selection. It'll update. So now my heading's going to look like that. This is all caps. This is bold. This is underlined for heading number 1. Okay, so statement of case, that's also a heading number 1. So we can put our cursor in there and we can press heading style number 1. Okay, now we go into our statement of facts. Our lowercase a, this actually is a heading number 3. We'll kind of go over that later, why this is a heading number 3 and not a heading number 2. This is a subheading of a statement of case. So we're going to update that as a heading number 3. We're going to tag that as a heading number 3. That kind of messed around with my formatting. I'm going to hit Control Z, put it back. I'm going to highlight this. Highlight this. And update my heading 3 to match my selections. So my heading 3 is in a large alphabetical numbering, and it is case capitalization of each word, but we wouldn't do like of doesn't get capitalized. Okay, so we mark that as a heading 3. Now we go down, scroll through our document. We're going to come find our next one. Here we have procedural history. That's a heading 3. Standard of review. This is a heading 1. We'll tag that as a heading 1. Summary of argument. That's a heading 1. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Argument. This is the main body of our pleading. So we're really getting into the meat here. This is where we have argument as a heading 1, and then we go into Roman numerals in capital with everything in all block, all bold, all capital letters, and that's going to be a heading style 2. So that's marked as a heading style 2. Under that we have a heading style 3. Everything's in layers. You'll learn a lot about that in your legal writing class, so I'm not going to go deep into how any of that works, just telling you this is a heading 1, this is a heading 2, this is a heading 3. We're going to mark the styles. Your legal writing professor will teach you why that is and the proper way to make those look. But for this class, we're not going to care about what that is and how that's done. Okay, so we're going to come in here, and right now this run through, we're only worried about our headings. So we're just looking for headings. This is a heading style 3. We're making sure that when we look at our styles, it shows as a heading style 3. That does. This is a heading style 3. Underneath it is a heading style 5. Because again, we would go from, this really should be our heading style number 4. So we're just going to come in, we'll update this to heading style 4 and match. Now you can see my paragraph moved up because it removed my space after paragraph. So come back, put in space after paragraph. So that stays double spaced as it should be. But my headings are single spaced. Okay, so again, so now we've updated our heading 4. We've got our heading 3, we've got a heading 4. We're scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Here is a heading. We need to change it to a heading style 4. We're scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Here is a D. This is a heading style 3. Make sure that says heading style 3. We're scrolling. This is a heading style 3. Make sure that's tagged. Scrolling, scrolling. Okay, Roman numeral 2. That's a heading style 2. With an A, that's a heading style 3. Here into B, that's a heading style 3, so everything's properly marked so far. Our attorney did a decent job in getting us ready. We'll put our cursor here in C. You can see in there that's a heading style 3. Everything's good there. We're scrolling, scrolling. D, heading style 3. Scroll, scroll to E, heading style 3. That's all good. Heading style F, that one's good to go. And we are finally at our conclusion, which is a heading style 1. So all of our headings have been tagged and are ready to go. So now we can go back to the top. We can come back here to our pages, first thing we need before our questions presented page is we need to have a table of contents. So I'm going to come in here, we'll just create a little bit of space. Now you can see my blank line is bolded and underlined. I'm going to just turn that off, give myself a couple of blank lines, and I'm going to insert a page break because I want questions presented on its own page. Again, I can kind of hit delete and put questions presented back at the top of the page where it belongs. So now you can see we currently have a blank page for page I, and we have our questions presented for page II. Okay, so now we have our blank page. We're going to come in and we're going to insert a table of contents. We'll come here to references. Sorry, references. We'll do our table of contents. So here on the end we have a table of contents. I'm going to come in, take that. It allows us to select the style. You can pick the style that fits whatever your attorney likes. I happen to like automatic table number 2 is my preferred method. And now I can see it lays out my table of contents. Just like everything was done. Now you can see I've got my questions presented showing as my II, my statement of my case as 1, and I can just do a quick little verification that everything is in here. I should be able to easily see my category 1 headings, my category 2 headings, my category 3 headings, because of the way they're indented and placed on our table of contents. Now notice on a table of contents, nothing is in bold except for table of contents. We never write the table of contents on the table of contents. You don't have a line that says table of contents and what page it starts on. Same with table of authorities. Those are all predecessing pages. It's just, you know, if you found the table of contents, you wouldn't need to read it to see what page the table of contents would be on. It's kind of redundant. So you wouldn't mark the table of contents as a heading. That is not a heading. It just is labeling our table of contents. Okay, so our label of contents is in. We can see it went on to 2 pages. Automatically gave us space before our questions presented because we had put in that page break. Next thing we're going to need is a table of authorities. So we're going to come in here at the end of our table of contents, and we're going to insert a page break. So we'll just come into some of the lines here, like giving myself a couple extra lines, and then I insert a page break. That's going to push and give me an extra line, extra page where I can put in my table of authorities. But before we can input a table of authorities, we have to go and mark our cases, right? Okay, before we can do our table of authorities, we got to mark all of our headings, or sorry, mark all of our cases and citations so we have that to put onto our table of authorities. So here we're going to start reading through our document one more time. This time we're ignoring headings and we're only looking for case citations. So we'll go through, and the first thing we see is a citation to the record. Now the record is documents that were used in the case. We do not put citations to the document, to the record, on our table of authorities. The record is not an authority. Only cases and statutes and books and things like that would be, but the record is not an authority. So we can ignore everywhere we see are, at, and then the record number. So we can just ignore all of these. Again, all that's going to be explained to you by your writing professor. This is legal technology, so I'm not going to take time to explain what all that means. But great question for your writing professor. So we're just keeping scrolling. Lots of this, going to the record, which is very typical here. We're just laying out what the facts are of our case. So it's common to, we're just going to, get everything into the record. We're going to cite to everything. So record, record, record. We can keep scrolling. Now we're into procedural history. We're still citing to the record. Citing to the record. We are finally into our standard of review. This is our first time we are citing to a case. So we're finally ready to mark a citation. Now, if you remember from your NSLT lessons, how to mark a citation, we're going to highlight the citation is how I do it. And then we'll go into our references. We'll go to our mark citation and we will click that. That brings up our mark citation. Now here under our selected text, this is how it's going to appear on our table of authorities. So we can come in here, we can hit enter. It's going to put the name of our case here on the top. It's going to put the citation underneath. And so here, our first number, this 108, this would be the volume. Then we'd have the reporter that publishes this volume, followed by what page number the case starts on, and the court and date, or court and year that it was published. So this is a U.S. Supreme Court case from 1988. So we make sure it looks how we want it to look. We put it into the proper category. We have cases, we have statutes, we have other authorities, rules, treatises, regulations. There's a lot of options in here. We can even create our own categories. But for this assignment, we're just going to use cases and statutes and maybe other authorities, but mostly just cases and statutes. I won't make you divide the cases into Supreme Court cases and state court cases, federal cases. That's, the attorneys you work for, sometimes they want it written that way. Again, for this assignment, you're just going to mark it as a case. So we have it as a case, and now we can decide what the short citation looks like. For simplicity, I just usually leave it just how it is and go ahead and mark that citation. And then we'll close this box. Okay, so looking at it, you can see it did two things for us. The first thing it did is it turned on our show hide when we marked it, and it inserted this phrase right here into our code. When we turn off show hide, that's going to disappear. So this tells us that this is tagged for our table of authority. That's what this TA stands for. It shows us how it's going to be formatted and tells us here in quotation what our short format is, and we can, and then it ends the code. So we can leave our show hide on at this point, and we can continue on reading through our brief, again ignoring all the place it says record, and reading through watching for any case citations. So we're watching. Okay, that's our only citation in that section. We're now to our argument. That's where the bulk of our citations are going to be, because that's the point of an argument, is to make our case and support it with cases that support what it is we're fighting for. So our first one here, Village of Schaumburg, we're going to highlight that. We're going to go to references. We'll mark our citation. We'll make it look how we want to. We're going to move the citation down here to the next line. Now you can see we have a volume. 444 is the volume. US is the reporter. 620 is the page number this starts at. 632 is the pin site, which is the specific page inside this case where we are pointing to. Now in our table of authorities, we never use pin sites. This is a list of all the cases, not the exact location in the case that we're talking about. So we are going to delete the pin site and leave it just the volume, the reporter, the starting page number of the case, and the year. We make sure, yep, this is a case, and now we can come down here and we can tag it and mark that for use. We can go ahead and close that. Okay, I like to close the box every time so I can see. Okay, so you can see that that's been added into our code. We see our table of authority code work here has been added in. So now I can continue reading from there. Now we see our next case is Gresham v. Peterson. I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to mark my citation. I'm going to make it look like I want it to appear. I can see it's got a pin site. I'm going to delete the pin site. Going to make sure it is a case, and I'm going to mark that and go. Now, as you learn through your SLT lessons, we could have it skip to the next citation. There's a lot of things we could auto do. Since this is our first brief that we're doing it on, I'm going to do it kind of the long way and make you kind of practice how that goes. So I'm going to close the box every time. That way you can easily see what's going on my document. And I read through to the next one. Our next case is Ward versus Rock Against Racism. We're going to highlight. We're going to mark citation. We're going to make it look like how I want it to. I'm going to remove the pin site. It is a case. I can see it's not on my short citation list, so I'm going to mark that and close my box. Continue reading. Okay, now I get into my first id. Id means the case we just referenced. So instead of having to write Ward versus Rock Against Racism, I just put id. Now we're going to mark this. Now clearly Ward is, this whole paragraph is all on the same page, but I'm going to mark it anyway, because in case my attorney copies and pastes and moves it around, I want it to be already tagged. Attorneys are notorious for making changes at the last minute. So if I tag it, I don't have to worry about if they came in and added things and now this is on a different page. It's always going to be accurate. So this id refers to Ward versus Rock Against Racism. So I'm going to highlight id. I'm going to mark my citation, but now I'm going to come down to my short citation. I'm going to highlight Ward v. Rock Against Racism, and I'm going to mark and close my window. So now I can see that this id was tagged for the table of authority as Ward v. Rock Against Racism. Okay, so now I can continue on. I'm reading. Hey, Brown v. Town of Cary. Highlight, mark citation, make it look how I want to, which is with my citation on the line underneath the name there. I'm going to look and see I do have a volume. I've got the F the third is my author. 294 is the page number the case starts on. Going to delete my pin site and make sure it looks how I want it to look. And it's a case. It's the first time I'm doing this case. I mark and close. Okay, so that's been added in. I'm reading. Next case, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Going to highlight that case. Going to mark that case. Going to make it look like I want it to. I can see it's got a pin site. I'm going to delete the pin site. It's the first time I've seen this marked this case. So everything is good to go. I'm going to hit mark and close. Next case, Hill versus Colorado. Going to highlight. Hopefully you get to where you're doing this in your head, stepping through these steps every time I do. So highlight, mark the citation, make it look how I want it to. Delete my pin sites. It is a case, adding it to the short citation. Hit mark, close. I'm seeing where your cursor is, and I'm going to continue reading from there. Okay, so now I can see here, Lee, 505 at 75. This is a short citation. This means we've cited to Lee before. So I can just highlight Lee. I can go to mark citation. I can find Lee on my case, which this attorney did some cut and paste. And we marked it, or we have it incorrect. So here he is referring to a case that he hasn't ever talked about. He hasn't given us a full citation to before, and we're getting a short citation. So there probably was some copy and paste. We're also going to just scroll up and make sure we didn't miss this case before. So we'll just do a quick little scan, see if we had talk about Lee before. One thing we can also do is a control F, right? That's going to have us look for that key. We can look for just the case called Lee, and we can see where did he, we can see Lee really refers to International Society for Krishna Conscious v. Lee. Very rarely does the short name, the short citation, refer to the defendant in the case. Usually a short citation usually refers to the very first name. So great, we figured that out. We can now come down here to Lee. We know it's a short cite for International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We're going to come select it from our short citation and hit mark and close. So now we can go on. Id means the previously referenced case, right? So what are we talking about with this id? Well, we can look back and see the last case we talked about was Lee. So this id refers to Lee. So we're going to come in, find International Society for Krishna Consciousness v. Lee, and we're going to mark that id. Continuing on, now we're here into Ward. We can see this is a short citation. It doesn't list plaintiff v. defendant. So we can highlight, we can mark, we can come down and find Ward v. Rock Against Racism from our short citation list, hit mark and close. Going on, we find an id. This id refers to Ward. So mark, Ward, mark, and close. Okay, so now we continue on. Clark v. Community for Creative Nonviolence. We highlight, we mark, we make it look how we want to on the table of authorities, and we make sure it is a case. It's our first time we see it. We add it to the short citation. We mark and close. Continue reading. Speet v. Shoot. We're going to highlight the citation. We're going to mark it. We're going to make it look how we want to. We'll delete our pin cite. It is a case. We add it to our short citation. We mark and close. Benefit v. City of Cambridge. Again, make sure you're not missing any of the cases. So don't get ahead of yourself. Always pick up from where we inserted last. So find our insert and we continue on. So we're going to mark Benefit v. City of Cambridge. We're going to highlight. We're going to mark. We're going to make it look how we want to on our table of authorities. We're going to delete our pin cite. It is a case. Add it down here to our short citation. We're going to close. Continuing on. Heffron v. International, we highlight. We mark our citation. We make it look how we want to on our table of authority. So we're going to hit enter after the name of our case. We're going to delete our pin cite. It is a case. We're going to add it to our short citation, mark, and close. Okay, so at this moment, I want you to take note that we are 36 minutes into this project. And remember, the first day I worked in the law firm, the attorney gave me 30 minutes to do this project. So you can see now I have been going really slow. We have been explaining a lot of things, but I want you to realize the time constraints that we work under when we're in a law firm sometimes. They don't usually give us all the time we need to work on it. So we're going to practice doing it accurately, and then we're going to be practicing doing it quickly. So just, keep that in mind. For this class, I'm never going to make it timed. You'll always have plenty of time on your own to do it. So it really is about accuracy here in my class. But just so you know, going into practice, you're going to want to work on your speed for how fast you can do this task. Okay, so we're continuing on. So we get to our first id. We're referring to Heffron, highlight id, mark our citation. We're seeing it before, so we tag Heffron from our short citation list, hit mark, and close. We're reading on. We run into another id. We mark it. It's Heffron. We mark it. We close it. We're continuing on. Reading. Deadwood City Code, section 22-13. Here is our first code that we get to. It's a statute. So we're going to highlight it. We're going to mark our citation. We're going to make it look how we want to. With a citation, we want it all on the same sentence. So we're not going to change how it looks here in our selected text. We're going to make sure we change our category to a statute. It still will go into our short citation. We can have a short citation for statutes, and we're going to mark it and close. So you can see Deadwood City Code was added to our table of authority. So now we can go on. We don't cite to the record. We're going on. We don't cite to the record. We're going on. No more citations. Citations. We don't mark when it's in a heading. So here we're talking about Deadwood City Ordinance. It is in a heading. We are not going to add that to our citation list. We'll only mark our citations when we talk about it in the body of the paragraph. So we continue on. Here we see United States versus Stevens. We're going to highlight, we're going to mark, we're going to make it look like how we want it on our table, going to delete our pin site, leaving just our volume, our reporter, our page, beginning page number for the case, and the year it was published. Notice this our category comes up with whatever we marked last, so we got to pay attention. This is not a statute, this is a case. First time we're seeing it, we add it to our short list, we mark it, we close it. Okay, moving on. We're reading, City of Houston v. Capitol Hill. We're going to come in, highlight, mark, make it ready for our table of authorities. It does not have a pin site. It's good to go. It's a case. Add it to our list, mark, close. We're reading. Oh, we're quoting Broderick. Didn't have to read very far. We mark. We make it look how we want to. We delete our pin site. It's a case. We're adding it to our short site. We mark. We close. We read. Oh, we're citing to Broderick. We're going to mark the citation. We've seen Broderick before, so we just have to come in and find what we called Broderick v. Oklahoma. We see it right here, Broderick v. Oklahoma. Select it from our short citation list, hit mark, and close. And now we continue on. We have an id. So we're going to mark. It's referring to Broderick v. Oklahoma. Select Broderick v. Oklahoma. We're going to mark. We're going to close. We continue reading on. We get to id. We're going to mark. This is Broderick. We're going to mark it and close. We're reading on. We don't cite to the record. We don't cite to the record. We don't cite to the record. Reading. Scanning down. Now we're at Burson v. Freeman. Highlight Burson v. Freeman, the citation. Don't want to get that comma. Highlight, mark, make it look like how we want to on our table. Delete our pin sites. It is a case, mark, close. You can scan, looking, reading for where I'm going. We don't mark to the record, so I'm scanning. Okay, New Orleans v. Dukes. So we highlight, we mark, we make it look how we want to, delete our pin site. It's a case, we mark, we close. Smith v. City of Fort Lauderdale. We highlight, we mark, we make it look how we want to. We're going to delete our pin site. It's a case, we mark, we close. Waikiki v. Small Business. We highlight, we mark. Now this one's a little bit different because it's a Lexis case, so it's an online case. So we can, it appears just a little bit funky. We treat it the same way as a regular case. So we still make it look the same. The name on the top line, the line underneath it will be that. And we can still keep it in our cases category. We mark it, we close. Reading onward. Record. Rosenfeld v. New Jersey. So we're going to highlight the case. We're going to mark our citation, make it look how we want to. Does not have a pin site, just the page number 901. We can see it is a case. And we can mark and close. Continuing on. Reading. Okay, Reed v. Town of Gilbert. We're going to highlight. We're going to mark, make it look like we want to on our table. We're going to delete our pin site. It's a case, mark, close. Looking for our next one. It's an id. Okay, so we're referring back to read. So we mark, we select read, we mark and close. We have another id. So we put our cursor at the id, we mark. This is also referring to read. Select read from our list, we mark and close. Continuing on. Here they've short-sighted to read. We mark, we select read from our list, we mark it and close. We continue reading on. We get to Davenport. We're going to highlight our citation. We're going to mark our citation, make it look how we want to on our table. We're going to delete our pinned sites. It is a case. We mark it and close. We continue reading. Here we're going back to read. We're going to mark our citation. We've marked read before. We tag read, we hit mark, we close, we continue reading. We have an id. Id refers back to the last case. Our last case we referred to was read. So this id is referring to read. So we mark the citation, we select read from our list, we hit mark and close. Reading on. Okay, we're finally to section E. Woo! Making progress. Okay, we highlight read. We mark our citation. We tag it to read. We mark. We close. We look at our next one. Here we have it again. Okay, mark our citation. This is referring to read. Mark that. We close. The court in read. Determined. We don't need to mark this read because it's just saying, it isn't like giving us a citation, it's just referencing and telling us what the court did. So we come here to our citation, we mark it. This id refers to read, just like the previous id did. We come in, we tag read, we mark, we close, continue reading, continue reading. Here's another id. We mark, we find read, tag that, mark and close. Keep reading, keep reading. We've got another id. We're going to mark that. It is also read, v. Town of Gilbert. We will mark that and close. We continue on. There's another read. Wow, we love to quote from read. We find read on our short list. We mark it. We close it. Moving on, here's an id that refers to read. We're going to mark it. That is going to be read. Mark, close. Moving on, Clark versus Community for Creative Nonviolence. So we highlight that. We mark the citation. This is our first time seeing, not our first time seeing Clark, right? So we can come in, find Clark on our short list, and hit mark and close. Going on, looking for cases, always looking for cases. We're now in section 2A. Here we have cats. So we'll highlight cats. We're going to mark our citation, make it look how we want to, delete the pin site, make sure it is a case, mark, close. Reading on. Here we're concurring with cats. Sorry, here's our citation, cats at 361. We mark it. It's referring to cats. We find cats on our short citation list. We mark it and close. Here we have id referring to cats. So we're going to mark cats and close. Here we have another id. We're going to mark it. We're going to tag it to cats, mark and close, and continue reading for our next case. We're now in section B. Arkansas v. Sanders. We will clean this up for our attorney. We can see there is a missing close paren right there. We will add that into the document for him. This is a great time. hit save. Don't lose your work. Don't want things to happen. Okay, continuing on, we highlight Arkansas v. Sanders. We're going to mark our citation. This is our first time seeing Arkansas, so we make it look how we want to. On our table, delete the pin site, make sure it's marked as a case, mark, close. Able v. United States. Again, we can see our attorney left off a close paren. We can add that in for her. She's busy. We can just fix some little minor things here and there as we go. We highlight able. We mark our citation, make it look how we want to on our table. We delete our pin site, make sure it is a case. We mark, we close, and away we go. Keep reading. We get an id that refers to able. Mark, find able on our list. Mark, close. Here's another id, refers to able. Find able on our list. Mark, close. Look for our next one, California v. Greenwood. Again, we can see our attorney left off a closed paren. We'll add that in for her. We'll highlight our citation, mark our citation, make it look like how we want to. We can, sometimes you forget, especially at this point, how many cases, whether this is the first time we've seen it, whether it's new, whether it's not. I can just scroll and look at the short citation list and see if it's on here. It's not, so I know this is the first time I'm marking it. I hit enter. Doesn't have any pin sites. It is a case. We mark. We close. Reading on, reading on. United States v. Sylvester. We're going to highlight, we're going to mark. Just going to do a quick double check. Yep, United States v. Stevens, but not v. Sylvester, so I know this is my first time. Make it look how I want to. It's just a volume. It's a reporter. It's a page number. It's the court. There is no pin site in that citation, so it's a case. We're going to mark and close. We're going on. In Sylvester, we're looking for the next citation, which is an id, refers to US v. Sylvester. We're going to mark that. We're going to select US v. Sylvester, mark, and close. Here we have an id. That's also Sylvester. I'll open. Go to US v. Sylvester, mark, close. Moving on, we're reading, reading, reading. Now we're in section C, United States v. Ruckman. We highlight that citation. We mark the citation. This is our first time seeing Ruckman. We make it look how we want to. It does not have a pin site. It is a case. We mark, we close. We're reading on, id. We can come here, mark. We can short cite this. This is US v. Ruckman. We can hit that. We can cite. We can close. Here's another id. That's also Ruckman. We can search through our list here by narrowing it down by typing R. So if our list is getting really long and we're having a hard time scrolling, we can start typing a few characters. That'll help us narrow down our list. We mark, we close. Okay, the court in Ruckman, ids. This is referring to Ruckman as well. I'm going to type RU so it narrows down my list. Put it into Ruckman. I'm going to mark, going to close. Okay, here's another id that's referring to Ruckman. We're going to mark. I'm going to find Ruckman on my list. I'm going to mark it and close. Moving on, looking for citations, citations. California v. Greenwood. Gonna come in here. We're gonna mark that citation. Have we seen this before? I don't remember. California v. Greenwood. I have. I'm going to tag that. And then I'm going to mark and close. Here we have an id that refers to Greenwood. We'll mark. We will find California v. Greenwood on our list. We mark and close. Here we have another id. We're going to mark, finding California v. Greenwood, mark and close. United States v. Most. Hey, that's our first time seeing this case, so I'm going to highlight my citation, mark my citation, make it look how I want to, delete my pin site. It is a case. We're going to mark and close. Reading on from our cursor, we see we're under Greenwood, which was not the case that we just talked about. So here they've short-cited Greenwood. We're going to come in here, mark our citation, tag it as Greenwood, California v. Greenwood. We mark, we close. Reading on, we're now in section E. Here's Greenwood. We mark, we tag California v. Greenwood. We mark it, we close. Reading on, here's cats. We've had cats before. We mark it. We read that as cats. Mark and close. Kylo. This is our first time seeing Kylo v. United States. We'll highlight the citation. We'll mark our citation. Make it look how we want to. Delete the pin site. It is a case. We mark, we close. Moving on. Here's Kylo. We mark, we tag it as Kylo. Mark and close. Oliver versus United States. We highlight Oliver, highlight our citation, mark our citation. This is our first time seeing Oliver. We're going to make it look how we want to, make sure it's a case. We mark, we close. Going on, id, that refers to Oliver. We mark, we tag Oliver, we close. Here's our next id. It talks to Oliver. We're going to find Oliver, mark, close. There's another id. We're going to mark. This is Oliver. We're going to mark it and close. Keep reading. Id. This is also Oliver. We'll mark as Oliver and close. Find our next id. Mark. It is also Oliver. Mark and close. We're now in section F. It mentions Oliver, but it doesn't cite to Oliver, so we're just going to skip over that and keep reading. We see we have finally reached our conclusion. All of our cases are marked. Whew. You tired as I'm tired? Okay, let's go do it. We're going to then go back. Actually, we're going to hit save. We're going to hit save before anything can possibly go wrong, right? Because power can go out anytime. We can lose connections. We could have anything go on. So now with I can see with notice I've got my show hide on. So that's why I can see where all my returns are. I can see where my page break is. So I'm coming to my empty page. I'm going to come to my first line. And now I'm going to go to references. And I've got all of my tables now. So I'm ready to insert my table of authorities. So I'm going to come here and click insert. It's going to ask me, well, how do I want those to look? I can include everything that I wanted into it. It's only going to include categories that I tagged a case under. So I didn't tag any cases under rules, so it's not going to give me the rules category. But maybe there were some times where I did mark them, but I don't want them on my table of authority, so I can choose which ones I want or don't want. Here, I want them all. I keep it as all. I can see how my table is going to look. use passim means when there's so many pages to number that are it's just crazy, saying that, you know, this case is on page 5 and 6 and 7 and 10 and on 12 and 14. The list gets so long, we just tell it passim. That means the case is cited throughout the entire document. Okay, so we want to use that, so we make sure that box is checked. We want to keep my original formatting. We want to use tab leaders. This is going to give us all of the dots. And we are now ready to hit OK and insert our table. So now you can see it inserted our table. Oh, but you know what I did wrong? I had the show hide on when I inserted my table. That means it picked up the page number currently, not what it is in the brief. So let's see what that looks like. So you can see here, Oliver versus United States is showing as being on page 25 and 26. When I turn off my show hide, remember that's going to hide all of our code, which is going to make our document a lot shorter. Right now we have 36 pages. Okay, so, but when I turn show hide off, my page count goes down, but my table of authorities didn't update. Now I can easily fix it. I can turn off my show hide. So just remember, we always insert our table with show hide off. But it's not the end of the world if we forget like I just did. We're just going to go to our table. We will right click. We will update filled. And that's going to update all of our page numbers for us, or should update. Now, for some reason it doesn't update, we can do a couple of different things. One, we can come in and we can select update table. So we can hit update table. So that should update us. Just to be double check, we're going to see that California v. Greenwood really is talked about on page 25. Always double check your work. So we're going to go to page 25 of the brief. 22, 23, 24, 25, and there is Greenwood and Oliver and Kylo on page 25. So again, we could double check by just going back, looking at our table, finding where those cases are. We can see Kylo, yep, on page 25. Yep, everything's looking good. Oliver on 25. We are looking good to go. Now we just make sure that our statutes are there. There's our one statute cited to in this brief. And we are ready to go. Now, just because this was an automated table, that doesn't mean we can't adjust it. So if for some reason I ended up with a typo in my thing, I could easily just double click into, I can just come into the line I want to, and I can fix my typo or my punctuation that's missing. So I'm always going to read over the case. Now, depending on the attorney you work for, some are fine with your table of authorities looking like this, where it is case name and then the citation and no spaces. Some attorneys like it to look a little more spaced out so that it's a little easier to read the table of authorities. We can easily come in and add that in and put that here into our table. We could also use, just our regular line spacing, but that's going to put it into double space everything. We could put add space after paragraph is going to give us the same effect that I was manually adding. So that's a quick way to do it. So we'll just come in, highlight all of our cases, tell it to add space after paragraph. Looks beautiful. Now it's a lot easier to read, easy to see where our cases are, see what the citations are. We have a beautiful, clean, crisp table of authorities. Except for, you know what? It didn't give me a very good heading. It just said cases. Well, that's not a very good heading to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a heading. So we'll just come in here. I want that heading to be in the middle. I want it to be in, let's see. I want it to look like my table of authorities did. So how does my table, capitals there, all in bold, underlined. So we're going to come in here and we're going to type table of authorities. And we're going to put that in underline. And it's centered. Beautiful. Now I have consistency. Remember, with documents, consistency is very important. So we're making sure our table of contents looks like our table of authorities. We're making sure that we are still on lowercase Roman numeral pages. Yep, we are. We're going to make sure our brief starts on page 1. So here's our statement of case. That starts page number 1. So fantastic job. This is how it should look. We're going to save it. And now you know how to format a federal brief, add a table of contents, add a table of authority, and properly add page numbering to your document. So now you're good to go. So save this document all completed and turn it into me here on this assignment page.